I received the divorce email while on duty in the 110-degree heat of Qatar. No conversation, no warning. Just a PDF attachment. 13 years of marriage wrapped up neatly in 3 pages of paperwork. My name is Jake Carter, 42 years old, a technical sergeant in the United States Air Force. I had been stationed at Al Udeid Air Base for 4 months when Lindsay, my wife, decided she'd waited long enough. The subject line of the email read, "Let's be adults about this." Below that were exactly 3 sentences. She had filed the papers, she had moved my things into storage, and she was now living with her new boyfriend, Travis, in the house we had bought together in Knoxville. I read it twice. Then I shut my laptop, stepped into the communal shower, and let the cold water run down the back of my neck. I said nothing. No reaction. No one on the team knew what had just happened. I stayed in uniform and went to my shift like it was any other day. That night, when I got back to my quarters, I opened the email, typed one word, understood. Then I hit send. No arguments, no pleading, no anger. Matt, my roommate, glanced over when he saw me sitting still. "You good?" he asked, eyes still on his novel. "Just some stuff back home." He nodded, then stayed quiet. Us long-serving military guys know some things don't need to be said, and truthfully, I wasn't even surprised. Lindsay had started changing 6 months earlier. She worked at a dental clinic in an administrative role, but suddenly she started coming home late more often, signed up for the gym 3 times a week, but always came back looking fresh, like she'd just been to the store. Her phone had a new passcode. She had new friends I'd never heard of. A new perfume that didn't come from me. I didn't go through her phone, didn't interrogate her. That's not my style. But I wasn't blind. I began preparing. Quietly. Not out of anger, but because life had taught me that anything can change. Especially when you're not there to control it. I rented a small storage unit on the west side of town. Moved into it my birth certificate, our savings records, the house deed, all documents under my name, thanks to the VA loan. Even my grandfather's watch and my mother's old silver box. Also opened a separate bank account at another bank. Each month, I transferred a portion of my paycheck, small enough that she wouldn't notice, but large enough that I wouldn't be left with nothing if it all went sideways. I still hoped I was wrong. When she hugged me at the airport the day I deployed, she only said, "Take care." Her eyes were dry. Like she was seeing off a coworker on a business trip, not her husband heading into a war zone. I should have known. Lindsay and I met in 2010 at a BBQ hosted by my buddy Tyler, also an old squad mate, while I was on leave. She had been studying nursing at the time, but later switched to admin work because it was less stressful. We got married just 8 months later. In the early years, she used to say she was proud of me. But over time, the questions crept in. When are you leaving the military? Or, are you ever going to get a real job? Even after 15 years of service, she still treated it like a temporary phase. We bought our house in 2014, a small place, on the south side of Knoxville. The deed was in my name because of the VA loan, but I added her to the title. Because I believed, when you're married, you share everything. Maybe I was wrong. I didn't say a word to anyone in the unit about the divorce, not a single word, not because I was ashamed, just I didn't see the need. At 42, with over 15 years of service, I had learned when to stay quiet. Emotions are a luxury in a place like Al Udeid. Every morning I still woke up at 0500, still polished my boots until they gleamed, still reviewed the weather reports and logistics briefings as if my life hadn't just evaporated into 3 lines of text. But at night, after my shifts, I started sitting alone longer, not out of grief, but to calculate. I went over every account, joint and personal. The joint account was nearly empty, just a few $100s left. My personal account was fine, thanks to the small transfers I had started making over a year ago. I logged into the storage system I'd rented in Knoxville and checked the document inventory. Birth certificate, property deed, VA loan paperwork, my mother's old will. Everything was there, untouched. I still remember the day I started storing each item. It was after a night Lindsay came home late, her eyes void of the light they once had. She lied smoothly. I'd give her an A if this were theater. But I had survived recon missions in Kandahar. I noticed the subtle shifts. I knew how to look at someone and see they were no longer on your side. I didn't follow her, didn't hire a private investigator, didn't hack her phone. I didn't need to. Lindsay wasn't the Lindsay of 2010 anymore. She was someone else, and I had accepted that. One evening, while I sat alone in the canteen, Matt sat down beside me without saying a word. He handed me a cold soda and just stared forward. "Not everyone has the guts to stay silent like you, Jake," he said, his voice just above a whisper. I nodded, didn't respond. Sometimes, silence is the only answer you have. I remembered the times Lindsay acted annoyed when I called during her hangouts with friends. The times she ended calls early saying, "I'm in the middle of cooking." I remembered when she told me her friend Melissa had just divorced and was living her freest life. Back then, I laughed. Now I realize how foolish that laugh was. I once suggested marriage counseling. She shut it down. "We're just going through a rough patch," she said. But I knew. Marriages don't break from big fights. They break from the small cracks, repeated over and over, that both people pretend not to see. A week after the divorce email, I got a notification from the bank. Lindsay had transferred another $12,000 from a savings account I'd forgotten to remove her name from. I gave a dry laugh. That one was on me. I should have been firmer sooner. But one mistake I would never make was letting myself lose everything without being prepared. That night, I called Tyler Grant, my best friend from military academy, now a lawyer in Nashville. I said just one sentence. "I need you," quietly and precisely. Tyler didn't ask a thing. "Send me every document you have. I'll start reviewing." I knew Lindsay thought I was too buried in military work to notice. She didn't know I used to lead an intel surveillance team in a combat zone. Just because I didn't react didn't mean I wasn't taking action. I logged back into our home security system, the cameras I'd installed myself during my last leave. Even from nearly 7,000 miles away, I could still see the front yard, the doorway, the kitchen. And then I saw him, Travis Miller, wearing my Seahawks hoodie, walking the dog I used to raise, drinking from the coffee mug I got from the Air Force Base back in 2015. Lindsay was smiling at him in the kitchen I'd personally retiled. I wasn't angry. I wasn't hurt. What I felt in that moment didn't have a name. It wasn't fire. It was cold steel. I closed the laptop, pulled out my notebook, turned to a blank page. I wrote, "Reclamation plan. Not with guns, with law." 2 weeks after the divorce email, I was sitting in the supply area when my phone buzzed. A notification from the banking app, $88,500, had just been withdrawn from the joint account. I didn't react immediately. I set my spoon down, opened the AIB app, and reviewed the entire transaction history. Nearly all of the remaining money, after my earlier small transfers, was gone. It had been moved to an unfamiliar account under the name Brentley Finance Holdings. That night, I went to the base communications center and called the bank through a secure line. The staff confirmed that Lindsay had made every transaction. Each withdrawal was legitimate since it was a joint account. She had started collecting the money bit by bit from the day I boarded the plane to Qatar. The transaction history said more than any words could. After the call ended, I stood in the hallway for a long time, watching young soldiers call their wives and kids, hearing laughter echoing, children's voices on speakerphone, promises like, "Daddy will be home soon." I used to have moments like that, but now all I had was a screen showing a balance of $22.37. Matt caught up with me afterward. "Heard you looked like you saw a ghost in the mess hall." I shook my head. My wife moved out, emptied the bowl. Accounts filed for divorce last week. He didn't react the way I expected. No, that's rough, or you'll get through it. He just asked, so what's the plan? I sighed. Not sure yet, but I'm not letting this slide. You're not the type to let things disappear quietly. Matt nodded, then walked off. I didn't sleep that night. Not from pain, but because my mind started connecting the dots. I logged back into the home security system. This time, I checked the interior cameras, the ones I'd installed discreetly in the living room and garage. Lindsay had clearly forgotten. They were still running. On the screen, Travis Miller appeared like he owned the place. He opened the fridge, wore my watch, slept in the recliner I bought after my first homecoming. But what sent a chill down my spine was when he sat at the kitchen table, opened a briefcase, and pulled out stacks of paperwork. Lindsay stood beside him, pointing at the pages. They were preparing to sell the house. I called Tyler Grant again the next morning. He had already started reviewing the documents I sent the previous week, and his voice grew heavier as I filled him in. Do you have a copy of the refinancing paperwork for the house? I never signed anything. The problem is, Jake, you did. At least according to the documents the bank received. I went quiet. An hour later, Tyler sent me a photo of the refinance application. My name, my signature. But the pen stroke wasn't mine. Forged. Sloppy. The first letter curved. Wrong, lacking the proper pressure. I trained in financial operations in the military. I know how to analyze handwriting, and the amount Lindsay and Travis had pulled, $330,000, from the very house under my name, bought through a VA loan, paid for with a soldier's honor. There's one more thing, Tyler added. The paperwork lists a co-borrower, Travis Miller. I looked him up. 2 DUIs, 1 fraud charge from 2019, currently on probation. I clenched my fist. Not angry, not shaking, just cold. Cold like the moment I boarded a helicopter at night during my first deployment to Bagram. What do we have to strike back? I asked. A lot. But first, you need to decide what you want. I looked at the kitchen on camera, Travis sipping. Coffee from the mug my mother bought me after my first return from overseas. I want 2 things, I said slowly. First, what is legally mine. Second, for her to understand. Every action has consequences. Tyler didn't hesitate. Then, let's begin. The next morning, I didn't report for my shift early. Instead, I sat in my room, laptop open, pen and paper ready. This was no longer just a divorce, not merely a personal betrayal. This was a systematic takeover, and I needed to handle it. The same way I used to handle missions in hostile zones, with planning, step-by-step control, no emotion interfering. Tyler called back at 07:20 Tennessee time. I found a name worth noting, he said. Brian Mitchell. He's the one who submitted the brokerage listing for your house, the one you didn't know was being put up for sale. Never heard of him, I replied. I figured. But Travis has. Brian and he have worked together before, at least 3 times. Each time with suspicious signs, homes sold under market value, assets transferred quickly, money routed through multiple accounts. Looks like they worked together to scoop up homes from people in crisis, then split the profits. Exhaled slowly. What I suspected was starting to take shape. Lindsay hadn't just left me. She had, whether unknowingly or deliberately, become part of a larger scam. You think they've done this to other military families? I asked. Still checking. But a few of the mortgage files have VA loan markers, and Travis seems to have a pattern. Always women who are separated or wives of deployed servicemen. I closed my eyes. The pieces were forming a larger picture. This wasn't just a broken marriage. It was part of a recurring, intentional scheme. What can we do? I asked. This needs to go federal. It's federal fraud if it involves VA, loans, and active duty personnel. I reached out to an old friend. She's an agent at the FBI field office in Nashville. Her name is Agent Monroe. She wants to speak with you, as soon as possible. I wasn't surprised. If anything, I felt relieved. I hadn't sought comfort in emotional justice for a long time. I wanted justice through the law, through documents, through evidence. That afternoon, I had a secure call with Agent Monroe and another agent named Blake. They already knew of similar cases, but were missing the connecting piece. When I provided the surveillance footage and images of the forged signature, they were silent for nearly a full minute. "This is the piece we needed," Agent Monroe said. "We've been tracking Mitchell and some associates, but no victims. Have had enough evidence or been willing to cooperate. Until now." "What about Lindsay?" I asked. "There's not enough yet to classify her as an accomplice." "But if we can prove she knew and enabled it, that changes everything. And even if she didn't know, there's still civil liability for impersonation at the very least." I nodded, though they couldn't see me. "I don't want to hurt her," I said truthfully. "But I won't let this continue." "Good," Agent Blake replied. "And we need you to stay calm. No contact, no confrontation, no warning. They need to believe everything's still under control." After the call, I opened my phone and saw a message from Lindsay. "Jake, are you talking to someone at the bank? Travis said someone's asking about the loan account." I didn't respond. Not because I was angry, but because I was following a plan now. Every action had a purpose. I spent the next few days collecting more evidence: bank statements, sale agreements, camera logs. Each night I reviewed everything carefully and sent each piece to Tyler and the FBI. On the fourth day, Tyler called back. "I just received a copy from the property registrar's office. Brian Mitchell has scheduled the home listing for next week, priced $60,000 under market. Clearly a quick sale. No inspections." "Does Lindsay know about it?" "Hard to say. But one detail on the listing documents she signed as Lindsay Carter Mitchell." I sat there, motionless. She had used a hyphenated last name. She had claimed her place in the scheme, at least symbolically. "Good," I said. "Let them think they've already won." Because what they didn't know was that I was still watching, still recording, every second, every word. That morning, I got a message from Lindsay. "Jake, I need to talk. Can we meet at Riverfront Park at 10 a.m. tomorrow?" I didn't reply. Not out of avoidance, but because I knew exactly what this was, not a reconciliation. This was a performance, a tactic to regain control through conversation. I forwarded the message to Tyler with one question. "What do you think?" His reply came right away. "Don't go. But let's see what she does when she thinks you're busy." We made a plan. I called Agent Monroe and informed her, "Tomorrow morning, Lindsay will think I'm meeting her, which means the house will be empty." Monroe simply replied, "We'll be ready." At 9:15 the next morning, Tyler and I were parked on a corner of the old neighborhood in a silver SUV borrowed from a former squadmate. We kept our eyes on the house that used to be mine, the one where I laid every floor tile and installed every towel hook in the bathroom. At exactly 9:42, Lindsay walked out of the house, wearing a cream-colored dress, hair tied neatly. She drove off, heading toward Riverfront Park. "She's left the stage," I said. "Now it's their turn." 10 minutes later, a black sedan pulled up to the front. The logo of Mitchell Property Group was printed clearly on the door. The man who stepped out was none other than Brian Mitchell. Travis was already inside, greeting him like an old teammate. I opened the surveillance app on my phone and activated full recording mode for every camera inside the house. Cameras I had quietly set up, linked to a separate cloud storage system. Tyler leaned in closer, watching every image stream across the screen. In the living room, Mitchell held up his phone and started taking pictures. Travis pointed toward the stairs, then the bedroom. The audio feed came through clearly. "Lock the price at $420,000. I've got a cash buyer, no inspection needed." "Same setup as the last ones?" Travis asked. Exactly the same. Only issue is this ex-husband acting up. But these military types are all the same. Loud at first, then they retreat. Who's got time to file lawsuits when they're deployed half the year? I didn't say anything. I just pressed a button. Send video to FBI. Note attached. Happening now. Less than 30 minutes later, the first FBI vehicle appeared. Then a second. The whole neighborhood was surrounded in a chilling silence. Tyler and I sat in the car, a short distance away. I watched as Travis was cuffed first, escorted out still wearing the shirt I once left in that closet. Mitchell followed behind, his face drained of all color. Agent Monroe called. We have a clear recording of their plan to commit real estate fraud, property theft, and financial deception. These two aren't going anywhere. What about Lindsay? I asked. She just arrived, standing on the lawn. Looks shocked. Do you want to speak with her? I looked off in the distance. Lindsay stood in front of the house, hand over her mouth, eyes locked on the agents carrying boxes of documents out the front door. No, I don't need to say anything. A while. Later, Tyler turned to me. You okay? I looked back at my phone. Lindsay had sent another message. Jake, what's going on? Travis got arrested. Police are searching the house. I don't understand. I typed one sentence. Who is Brian Mitchell? 3 dots appeared, then vanished, then returned, then disappeared again. Finally, she replied, I don't know what you're talking about. I didn't respond, because the story had already said more than enough. The case moved faster than I expected. Travis Miller pled guilty within 3 weeks. Charges included financial fraud, forgery, and conspiracy to defraud an active duty service member. He was sentenced to 8 years in federal prison. Brian Mitchell, the smooth-talking broker with a mouth that never stopped, initially kept quiet. But when the FBI presented the recording from my house, along with 3 similar real estate files from Georgia, Texas, and South Carolina, he flipped. 12 years. No parole. As for Lindsay, she denied knowing anything about the scam, claimed Travis had convinced her that I was hiding money, planning to file for divorce first so she'd get nothing, claimed that he handled all the refinance, paperwork, and that she just signed to get it over with. Maybe that was true. Maybe she was just a pawn. Or maybe, as I had long suspected, she knew more than she ever admitted. In the end, Lindsay signed a civil agreement. She waived all rights to the house, gave up any claim to my military pension, repaid the funds she had unlawfully withdrawn through insurance and her personal accounts, and signed a statement admitting she had forged my signature on the refinance documents. I didn't press criminal charges. I didn't want to see her name on an indictment. Not because I forgave her, but because I didn't need to. I had reclaimed what was mine, and sometimes that's enough. 6 months after the message that read, "Let's be adults about this," the divorce was finalized by the court. No fault, no disputes, no tears. The day I signed the final papers, Agent Monroe called. Jake, just wanted to let you know, Travis and Mitchell have both been sentenced. Thank you for your cooperation. And one more thing. We've just identified 11 other military families who were targeted. The patterns are nearly identical. Your case helped us connect it all. I nodded, even though no one could see. After that call, I sat on the porch steps of my rented cabin in Bozeman, Montana. In front of me, distant mountain ranges. Behind me, a wooden kitchen I built with my own hands. At my feet, a German shepherd named Scout, fast asleep, quiet, loyal. Without judgment, I had sold the old house. Not for the money, but because I couldn't walk into that kitchen again. Couldn't hear the creak of that familiar floor without remembering all the nights she never came home. I used the money to buy a small cabin, 2 bedrooms, 20 minutes. Outside downtown Bozeman, a stream runs behind it, no neighbors within a mile. I retired early after 20 years of service, just enough to qualify for a pension. More than enough to know there's no such thing as a perfect victory. I started doing small woodworking jobs around the area, building cabinets, fixing doors. Not much, but enough to keep my hands busy and my mind clear. One autumn afternoon, I received a handwritten letter from a woman in Fort Worth, Texas. Her husband, a Navy man, was stationed in Guam when Travis and Mitchell approached her, offering to help sell the house fast since her husband had financial troubles. The FBI had warned her, thanks to the statements and records from my case. You don't know me, but you saved my family. Because of you, they got nothing. Thank you for not staying silent, for standing up when walking away would have been easier. I read the letter twice, then pinned it to the old fridge in my kitchen. Every time it rains, every time old memories return like a storm, I read it again. Not to remember Lindsay, but to remember that I didn't let myself fall. The last I heard of Lindsay, she had moved back to her hometown in Oregon, working at a new clinic. No one really knows much about her, and I don't ask. I no longer feel anger or regret. She chose her path, and I chose mine. A quiet one, solitary. But this time, it's mine alone. It can't be forged. It can't be stolen. It can't be betrayed. Just me and true freedom.